is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I made a video, but I am back today and I'm working on the wagon currently in the garage. Today we're going to be replacing a few things on the front end just to tighten up the steering, and so I've got a few new parts for the wagon that I'm going to show you guys real quick. We're going to be changing the wheel bearings. I already did the driver's side, so I'm going to be showing you how to do the passenger side. So we're going to be changing the wheel bearings. We're going to be changing out the lower ball joint. We're also going to be changing out the upper control arm because the ball joint and the bushings are kind of shot, so it'll be time to change that out. Also, just giving you guys an update on the exhaust. I did find an exhaust for the wagon, and here's the gasket for it, but the exhaust is a little delayed with shipping, so that should be here by Tuesday. So just going to throw these parts on. I already did the driver's side, so I'm going to actually show you guys how to do the passenger side since I haven't done this side yet. As of last week, I had to replace the caliper on that side, on the driver's side. I thought it would be nice to upgrade the brake lines as well, so I actually added steel braided lines, and I bled the brakes. I put in new brake fluid, and it feels really good. So I changed the rotors as well. I have been trying to get this wagon roadworthy for the last few weeks now, just kind of collecting parts and doing things slowly. So I figured I'd take the time today and put on the last few parts to the front end. Once I get the exhaust on, we'll throw that bad boy on, and I'm going to take this car to the shop for a wheel alignment, and that'll be pretty much be it, so we can start dailying this again. I had some wiring issues with it before that I actually wasn't getting a brake light, but I figured that all out. It was just a silly bulb. And yeah, so the wagon is in good shape. We're just going to throw on these parts, give you a little how-to on how to tighten up the front end as far as lower ball joint, wheel bearing, upper control arm. I already got the car jacked up, and we're going to pop this wheel off and get started right away. We need to get this entire knuckle off the car. So we got to take off this caliper, rotor, and loosen up the brake line so that way we have a little bit of free play. You want to disconnect from here the upper control arm, you want to disconnect the tie rod, and you want to disconnect the lower ball joint. Okay, the next order of business after you take your caliper off and take your rotor off, you want to support the brake caliper so there's no stress on the line. So usually what I do is I'll take like a bungee cord and just wrap it around the control arm so that way there's no pressure or any stress on the brake line. So support that, and the next step is we're going to be taking off the outer tie rod with the cotter pin. And then we're going to be taking out the upper control arm with the cotter pin as well. Okay, so I just have a simple little contraption just holding up the caliper for now. Just got it wrapped around the upper control arm. We are changing this out, but we're not doing this right yet. So let's move on and get this tie rod out. You can't really see it. Let me get a better light. Let's get this tie rod out. It's basically the cotter pin and the 17. Same thing with this. We got to remove this cap, which is 2 10 bolts, and it'll expose the upper ball joint. And on the bottom, the lower ball joint and cotter pin as well. This is a 17. Once this is connected, we're going to tap it with a little bit of a hammer, and it should pop right out. fight with the cotter pins a little bit, but got them out on the upper and lower ball joints. So tie rod is off, and these are both loose. Caliper is supported. You want to be able to, don't forget to take your axle nut, which is a 32. I left the nut on, but it doesn't matter because you don't want to damage the threads when you're hitting it with the hammer. But if you hit right here, this will pop up. It'll release all the tension. And same thing on the bottom. If you hit right here on the ball joint, not the ball joint itself, but the little nub that sticks out, it'll pop up and it'll loosen up all that pressure, so that way you can remove your entire knuckle. Okay, so after some frustrating moments with the cotter pin and the old ball joints, she was able to break free. So this is what you should have after you remove the knuckle. It's basically just going to be the hub, the bearing, the spindle, the lower ball joint. So let's get the spindle off and the lower ball joint out. Come over here to my trusty makeshift dolly. So I don't press out the actual hub, I just basically bang it out with a hammer. So that's going to be the first thing you do. So how the hub comes out, if you flip it over, you're going to see a little outer ring, which is, you want to find a socket about the same size exactly. And this is a, what size is it? This is a 24. So we're going to tap that, that hub out quickly. Got the 24mm socket. Got a little bit better of a light situation set up. So as I was saying before, you want to tap here where the silver is. That's your hub, and that's the first thing that's got to come out before any of this process starts. So there's only one way it can come out. Make sure you're on a good supported level. I've seen a lot of videos where the guys do it on wood, and I guess it's the best place to do it because you don't want to risk damaging or bending your actual spindle arm. So wood is the best place to do it, or on, I should say. So we take our trusty 24mm and our big hammer and just start whacking. Okay, so alright, so our hub has popped out, and as you can see, we still have a little piece of the bearing attached to it, but that's no problem. And this is what you're gonna get. So now that we got the hub out, we're gonna notice that inside there's a snap ring. So let's put some lubrication on that, and that's the next thing that we got to get out. You're going to need some snap ring pliers, otherwise it's going to be pretty difficult. What I do recommend doing, since we push the hub out this way, there's a lot of pressure right now on this snap ring, so I'm going to tap back down on this bearing from here, so that way I can alleviate some of the pressure that's holding onto the snap ring at the moment. So I let it soak a little bit in the penetrating oil. Let's see if that changed. Oh, almost had it. So once you get the ring above the lip, just be careful because it could fly out. And this thing's under a lot of pressure. Just a little recommendation, just lightly sanding this or cleaning this off will make the installation a whole lot easier, and removal next time a little easier. Now that you got your snap ring out, you are ready to remove the rest of the bearing. So just like the hub came out, the rest of the bearing is going to come out the same way. So you need to find a socket now that's going to fit around the outside of this and just hammer it out. Voila! Alright guys, so this is what it's going to look like with no bearing. You're probably like, oh my god, he bent the hell out of his heat shield, or brake shield I should say. Yes, I did bend it because I'm actually not going to be retaining it, so now is the time to get rid of it. If you notice these three little Phillips head, these are the screws that are going to allow you to take the brake shield off. So mine are pretty rusted out, so I'm going to have to grind them off, but yeah, I basically don't reuse these either. So I'm going to take that off real quick, and I'll show you the next steps to installing the lower ball joint and the bearing. Goodbye. The process for the lower ball joint removal is pretty much the same as what we've been doing. We're going to tap it out, and it's going to back out this way. Now a lot of these lower ball joints, depending on if they've been replaced or not, sometimes you got to remove this this boot here. You got to remove the boot, and there's a snap ring just like how we took out with the main bearing. Sometimes there's a snap ring, but on this one, since I did the passenger side, I did the driver's side already, there wasn't a snap ring on that one, and I don't see one here, even though the boot is on. So I'm gonna remove the boot anyway, just to double check, but sometimes they don't come with it, but it's just good to, it's obviously good to just check. This doesn't look like the original ball joint because it has an NOK, which is a company that makes lower ball joints, so let's take the boot off and just double check to see if there's a snap ring anyway. You don't necessarily have to be careful since you're not keeping this ball joint. And from what I see, I do not see a snap ring. So as you can see, there is no snap ring. So we're just going to tap it out. Alright, let's get ready to reinstall the new parts. So before we can continue putting in the new bearing and putting in the new ball joint, we have to get the rest of the old bearing off of the hub that we are reusing. So there's a few ways you can go about this. The easiest way, I guess you could say, you could obviously own a bearing puller and just pull it off. But in my previous video, I showed you guys that if you grind down the old bearing, it'll eventually release tension and you'll be able to pull it off with a small pry bar. So what I'm going to do now, I got basically a battery grinder, and I'm gonna basically grind right where it starts to go up, so that way I break the strength of the metal. So I'm going to work on that. I'm not going to film any of this, but basically you want to grind down enough so that way you don't hit the actual hub itself. If you do hit it, not a big deal, but try not to, since we are reusing this. Okay guys, so took some time and I grinded down the outer bearing ring. I did touch it a little bit, nothing to be worried about. Let me show you guys in the light. I don't know if you can see that good enough. Nothing that's gonna make an issue or anything like that. So now we can start basically putting on our new parts to this old spindle. So first off, we're going to do the ball joint. The lower ball joint's the first thing you want to do, since it's going to be a little tough if you do the other ones first and then try it. So just make sure you clean this, put a little bit of a lubrication around where the ball joint goes. And I'm going to be using a press today. I didn't really like the method of smacking it with a hammer. Even though I'm not saying it doesn't work, I prefer using a press. That way everything, you know, it just goes straight. It's a little easier for me. That way having this little vice grip right here does make the world of difference when doing jobs like this. So if you have one, I recommend you just use it, obviously, but if you don't have a press, the hammer method is completely fine. So this is what I'm going to be using to press in the ball joint. Now I know a lot of you guys probably don't have this. I actually bought this back when I used to wrench, so it's a really good tool. It's a universal master ball joint and U-joint set. So if you guys are doing U-joints or anything on the bigger trucks, this is the kit that you want. Now it's kind of expensive, but it is worth every penny. I've only used it a few times, but I will say this thing kicks ass, man. I bought it just to have the satisfaction of knowing that if I do come across a ball joint or something like that that needs to be pressed in, I have the necessary tools for it and it won't hold me down. So we're gonna set this thing up and I'm going to show you exactly how I set it up. Now I've already installed the little snap rings that come in this tool. The nice part about this ball joint kit is that you don't have to hold anything, and a lot of kits nowadays that you get off of eBay, everything has to be held, including the knuckle itself, including what you're pressing in, so it's a little hard to get everything lined up. But with this kit, it makes it kind of like a breeze. So let me set it up and I'll show you how I set it up using the additions that comes with it. Just to give you guys an idea of how I set it up, I'm using the BJP112A as my spacer, and then I have an extension on there, that's BJP116, and I just have the flat part above the ball joint, and this is where I'm going to put the gun to drive the ball joint down. Now you can't really see how far it goes down, but I made sure there was enough room so that the actual threaded part of the ball joint doesn't get stuck on anything like that. The nice part about this thing is that it fits into the C-clamp very nicely. So we're gonna put the gun on this and get this ball joint pressed in. The ball joint is done, and yeah, so now we just gotta put the snap ring on, put the boot back on, and let's get this bearing pressed in. Okay, so the new ball joint kit is going to come with a new crown nut, new snap ring, and it's also going to come with a new cotter pin. Put in the snap ring. Okay, once your snap ring is on, we're going to slide the boot back over. Make sure our boot is on. And then the last thing is we're going to put the boot retaining spring so that way the boot does not come off. Okay, so after everything is said and done, you have a fresh ball joint. Okay guys, so this is the bearing kit that I purchased not too long ago, and honestly this is one of the best bearing kits I've ever purchased. Everything is really high quality, and I paid under $100 off of eBay. So they have a majority of sizes and fittings that configure with your specific vehicle. Now I've used this kit about 3 times, and honestly everything works perfect like it should. There's no bending in the metal or binding, so really good kit. Got it off of eBay. I don't know what brand it is, but feels like it's really good quality stuff. So yeah, basically you can get cheap stuff and still get good results out of it. So let me show you what I'm using to get this done. For the front piece that you're actually going to put on the bearing, you want to try to get this as straight as possible. So I usually like to clean the inside a little bit, put a little grease, just rub my finger through so that way there's some type of lubrication, even though it's not required. You want to try to get it as straight as possible, or line it up so that way it's as straight as possible. Now, the keys from this kit that I'm using is, this is a faceplate. It's one of the smaller sizes, and what this does basically, it is a little smaller than the bearing itself. That way, when we do press the bearing in, as the bearing proceeds to go into the knuckle, the actual piece that's pressing it in won't catch on the side, so that way it doesn't bind or anything like that. So you got to find a piece that's just a little smaller than the bearing itself to press the actual bearing in. Now as for the back, this piece will be set on the back, and it's bigger than the hole, so that way it doesn't press into the hole. So that way when your bearing is being pressed in, it hits the outside, so that way nothing comes inside as it's being pressed in to damage it. So basically for the front, you want something smaller than the bearing, and for the back, you want something bigger when you're pressing it in. So let me show you how I set this up. Okay guys, so this is how it's going to look when you're finished setting it up. I have my bolt piece, well not my bolt, but my nut, so that way I can put the gun on it. Unfortunately, it's a big size, so it's a 32. It's kind of annoying if you have a regular socket set. But make sure this is as aligned with the bearing as much as possible. And you're gonna need something to hold this end because it's gonna spin as you start to tighten this down. So I'm actually gonna put it in the vise. Move the camera back. So I'm gonna loosen up the vise. That way it's correct alignment. Move that over, open this up. We're gonna actually put the head of the nut inside so that way it's held by the vise. So we get our gun after that. Our trusty 32 socket. Let's press this in. It's like the easiest bearing I've ever pressed in. Alright guys, so as you can see that was fairly easy. Bearing is in. Now we just can't forget to put our snap ring back in. Okay, snap ring is in. The next step to completing this process is to put the old hub into the new bearing. So this is fairly easy. We're going to set up basically the same tools to do this. Maybe switch a few things around, but I'll show you how I do that and how I go about using the correct sizes. Okay guys, a very similar setup to actually driving the bearing in itself. So I have the hub as straight as possible. I have a piece over the hub that doesn't really matter what size it is as long as it's even. Doesn't really have to be smaller or bigger. But now for the back part, since we're only pressing the hub itself into the bearing, Instead of using the outer edges of the actual knuckle, we're only using a very small piece. Basically, the piece we used in the front is now in the back, because you only want to hold the outer edges of the bearing itself, so that way you know when the hub has gone in far enough. So I'm going to get this pressed in real quick. I have it set up almost the same way, but just the pieces switched around. So let's see what happens. She's in. Got a fresh wheel bearing. The back looks like everything's pressed up. It's about as far as you want to go. You can't go too much farther than that. But yeah, so basically the knuckle is all fresh and set up for reinstallation. Okay guys, so we are almost there in replacing most of the small front end components. So the last thing we're going to do today is we're going to replace this upper control arm. It's fairly easy. It's only 2 bolts to loosen it. And as far as getting it out, a lot of people like to disassemble it, but I'll show you how I get it out. Basically what you do is you're going to release the fork on your front strut, and you're going to drop it down so that way you can easily remove and slide this upper control arm out. Now, up top, let me see if I can get a good angle. You're just gonna have to move over your fuse box because there's the bolts are underneath. So there's a 10 here and there's a 10 there, and we're gonna move the fuse box out of the way so we can access those upper control arm bolts. So I took the bolts out up top, and your control arm is basically just gonna come down since it's not being supported by anything. How loose this ball joint is, it's like woo! See, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to replace it. It's because it's not bad. I wouldn't say this is like, oh my god, I gotta get a new one, but this car is gonna be my daily again, so I'm just trying to freshen things up. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to really just do the front end up nice. A lot of these joints were loose and just old, and the previous owner that I bought this from didn't know if the ball joints were done anytime, because he didn't do them, or the wheel bearing, so I thought it was time. So basically what you want to do to get this out, since you don't really want to have to take it apart, I'm going to take this bolt out. It's the strut fork bolt and the lower strut fork bolt. That way we can pop this fork off and just slide this arm down. For the lower one, you're going to need a wrench on one side, so that way the nut doesn't spin. Pop this down now. Wiggle this out. Got your fork out. Might have to loosen one of the brake lines if it's in the way, which mine of course is. Boom, and your control arm is out. So you want to try to mimic the correct alignment angle. Obviously you have to get an alignment, so I'm going to set this I'm going to set the new control arm up pretty much the same way this one was set, and then just basically reinstall it and start putting everything else back together. So that wraps it up for today's quick little front end fixes on the all-wheel drive wagon. I rotated the tires real quick just because I've never done that yet when I got these tires put on. I wanted to try and clean up these rims, but I kind of ran out of time for today. If anyone knows these all-wheel drive models, they come with these center caps. When my car was stolen, 2 caps were missing and 2 caps were left on, but I did happen to buy an extra set of caps off of eBay, so I'm gonna clean up those rims, probably repaint them and all that, because they're pretty nasty. So that's gonna be the next little project, but I'm just waiting on the exhaust, and we're gonna be getting a wheel alignment next weekend. So this car is gonna be back on the road full time, and it's gonna become the daily again. Today was just kind of sporadic, and I had some parts laying around that I wanted to upgrade, and this car has been kind of, you know, sitting at the moment, so nothing else has really been going on with this car. I did pick up a set of OEM mud flaps because I only have the 2 front ones. I'm missing the rears. So I saw all 4 on eBay for a good price. So I scooped those up. So once again, I just want to thank you guys for subscribing, for tuning in. Videos are kind of delayed at the moment because I'm just so busy, but I am going to be putting out more videos soon. Just been kind of busy with the new year and all the holidays. But thanks again, guys. I really appreciate all the new subscribers. I hope you guys like the videos. And I will check you guys out on the next one. Have a good one and Happy New Year.